Welcome to Midlife, interrupted and unfiltered.
I'm Melissa, coach, counselor, and professional truth bringer.
And I'm Ann, trial lawyer, accountability partner, and certified Pilates instructor. Yes, really.
We're two East Coast women who met at kindergarten drop-off.
And 15 years later decided midlife needed a megaphone and not a mute button.
So we're here to interrupt the negative narratives
and share the unfiltered truth about reinvention, perimenopause, and everything in between. Just real talk. Let's go. So welcome to Money Honey, episode 9 of Midlife, Interrupted and Unfiltered, where we're finally having the conversations about finances that midlife women deserve to be having. Today, we're tackling something that affects millions of women, but rarely makes it into the living room, the coffee shop, or even the therapist's office. Our relationship with money at midlife. You know that feeling, you're 40-something, 50-something, or maybe even 60-something, and suddenly you realize that nobody really ever taught you how to talk about money with confidence. Not your parents, not your school, and definitely not your friends, even though you'd bet money that they're stressed about it too.
So before we dive in, let me pose something to our listeners. When was the last time you had a real conversation about money? Not a complaint about bills or a comment about the stock market, but a genuine, vulnerable conversation about your financial fears, your goals, your future. If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. And this is what we call the money honey silence, and it's costing us more than we realize.
So let's dig in and start this discussion. Understanding the money honey silence. Let's start with a truth that might sting a little. Midlife women are having every other conversation under the sun. We're talking about perimenopause. We're talking about Botox. We're talking about hormone replacement therapy. We're sharing struggles with possibly caring for aging parents. We're comparing notes about our kids, our careers, our relationships. But money, nobody's talking about that. Money stays locked in a box. So why is that?
I think, and it comes down to a few things, and let's unpack them because naming the problem is always the first step to solving it. First, there's this shame factor, right? Many of us grew up with the message that talking about money was impolite, or worse, not having enough money meant we've failed somehow. For women especially, there's this weird intersection where we're supposed to be strong and independent, but also somehow magically know how to manage finances without anyone ever actually teaching us. It's an impossible standard, and we've internalized it.
And as a side note to that, I think too, a lot of women who are in relationships and married might have defaulted the finances to their spouse and not really ever been in touch with where they were financially in the marriage and they themselves. So let's talk about the second thing that might be a hindrance to the conversation about money. The first one, like we said, was the shame factor. The second one, I think, is there's this comparison trap. We see what we think our friends' financial lives look like, the vacation photos, the house upgrades, the retirement announcements, and we assume that everybody else has it figured out while we're secretly drowning. And this is what is called the Instagram effect, right? And it keeps us isolated in our financial struggles.
Yeah, and it's real. The struggle is real there. And third, I think the belief that it's too late is another hindrance, right? By midlife, many of us feel like we should already know everything there is to know about money. And if we don't, admitting it feels like we're admitting failure. So instead of asking for help or having honest conversations, we white knuckle it alone.
So let's talk about why midlife matters in regard to money and finances. So here's what makes this conversation so urgent. Midlife is not just any time in our lives. It's a critical financial window. By your 40s and 50s, decisions need to be made that will have an impact on our next 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. So think about what's happening simultaneously. Maybe you're still supporting your kids. Maybe you're putting them through college or graduate school. Maybe they're still in the house. Maybe your parents are starting to need financial support. Maybe you've had career interruptions due to caregiving, which statistically a lot of women have had. So all of this is happening while you're supposed to be in your peak earning years and your prime saving years for retirement. So this is also a time when compounding works hardest for us. Every dollar that you invest in your 40s or 50s, it's got less time to grow than it would have at 30, but it still has significant time ahead to compound. So understanding this and acting on it can completely transform your financial security.
And let's be honest, right? Midlife's also a time when we're dealing with this emotional weight of time passing. And we're more aware of our mortality, and we want more security, and we want more options. So knowing that we won't be a burden to our kids is something that I know is important to many of us. We want to travel. We want to retire. Maybe we want to start a business or a podcast. Or maybe we just want to know that we can cover an emergency without panicking. All of it is valid, right? All of it matters. And all of it requires us to actually talk about it and have real conversations about money.
So then there's that whole emotional layer.
Yeah.
So before we get to the practical framework, let's talk about the emotional stuff, because money isn't actually about money. Money is about security, identity, choices, freedom, control. It's about our deepest fears and our biggest hopes. So I want everybody to think about their relationship with money. What was the message you got growing up about money? Was money plentiful or scarce in your childhood home? Did you see your parents fighting about money or never discussing money? Did you learn that money was something that you earned through hard work? Or did you learn that it was inherited, or that it was really never within your reach?
And all of the answers to these questions are stories that we carry, right? They shape how we make decisions about money now. And here's the thing, we don't usually realize we're operating from these old stories until we get curious and then we take a deeper look. And some of us learn that asking for money is selfish, right? Some learn that investing is too risky and only for rich people. Some learn that talking about money might be a character flaw. And if any of those stories are running your show in your life, it's really hard to make financial decisions that serve you best. So part of having this conversation is getting honest about beliefs, and it's doing a little internal archaeology. And I just want to add here that when you think about those narratives, I am in a different spot where I grew up with a single mom and she grew up with a single mom. And so all I ever knew was women supporting their families themselves. And so those are the stories that I have. And even though I'm married with kids, I still have always thought, and I tell my girls, always make your own money, because that's what I learned.
Yeah, for sure. And there's something to go with that, just having that independence and being self-sufficient and self-reliant can go a long way, whether in midlife or early life or late in life. So it's time to get practical. So we're going to talk about a framework, because Melissa loves her frameworks. So let's talk about this Money Honey framework. And this is a way of approaching your financial life that is going to put you back in charge. And this framework has 5 pillars, and we're going to walk through each one. So pillar 1 is clarity. Before you can do anything else, you need clarity. And clarity means 3 things. You need to first know what you currently have. What are your assets, your savings account, your retirement accounts, your investment properties, everything. Second, you need to know what you owe. What are your debts? These are your mortgages, your credit cards, your loans, everything you owe to anybody and everybody. And third, you need to know what's coming in and what's going out every month. I know that sounds like a lot, and I know some of you are avoiding this because you're afraid of what you might find. But keep in mind that whatever that number is, it's better to know than to live in fear of it. Because once you know, you can actually do something about it.
And clarity also means getting clear about your values. What do you actually want your money to do for you, right? What matters in your life? Is it security? Is it freedom? Is it helping others? Is it travel? Maybe it's independence. Write those down and make sure they align to your values, because the best financial plan in the world isn't going to work if it's not aligned to what's important to you.
So what's the second pillar, Mel?
So the second pillar is strategy. So you have clarity, so now we need a strategy. And this is where you actually get to decide what to do with what you have. So this includes things like budgeting, saving, investing, repaying debts. But here's what makes it different from just following some random advice. It's your strategy. It's built on your values and your specific life.
So, strategy also means thinking about big financial events that are likely coming your way. Are you planning to retire and when? What will that look like? Is your family going to need care? Is somebody in your family going through a difficult time where they're going to need financial assistance? Do you have a wedding to pay for? Are you going to support your adult child through graduate school, medical school? Do you want to start a business? These aren't frivolous questions. These are the questions that should shape your financial decisions.
Yep. You have clarity, you have a strategy, and my favorite part is you have to take action. So, pillar 3 is action. And this is where a lot of us get stuck. We have clarity, we have a strategy, but maybe we don't take action. So, this is about breaking the strategy into specific, doable steps with an actual timeline. It's not like just save more money and it's going to happen. It's more like, okay, set up an automatic transfer of $300 to my savings on the 15th of every month starting April 1st. That's action.
So, clarity, strategy, action. And let's talk about the fourth pillar, which is community. And I think this is one of the hardest for everybody, but it's also the most important. This is where we stop being silent. This is where you have a conversation with a partner, if you have one, or where you find a friend or a group who also wants to get real about money, where you maybe work with a financial advisor, where you stop carrying this alone. And why is this important? Because isolation makes everything harder. And when you talk about money with people you trust, a few things happen. First, you're going to realize you're not alone. Second, you're going to learn from other people's experiences. Third, you're going to hold yourself accountable because you put it out there in the discussions with others. And fourth, you're going to get emotional support when you need it.
And I'm going to add one more pillar, pillar 5, and that's evolution, because this is about recognizing that your financial life isn't a fixed thing. It's going to change as your circumstances change, as you get older, as your priorities shift. So you need to build in regular check-ins, maybe quarterly, maybe annually, and ask yourself, does this still work for me? Where do I need to adjust? What have I learned? So those are the pillars, and they might seem simple, but I think the hardest one we have to remember is actually taking the action.
So let's talk about how we start those conversations about money. So you want to have this conversation, but you don't know how to get started. So let's get some real conversation starters to use. So if you're married or partnered, you might say to your partner or spouse, I want to have a conversation about our financial future, and I want us to be honest about how we're feeling. Can we set aside an hour this week? And if you're single, you might find a trusted friend who you say to, I've been thinking about my finances or my financial security, and it's stressing me out. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Do you have time to grab coffee and talk about it?
Or maybe if you're considering working with a professional, you might say, I want to work with someone who gets that money isn't just about numbers. It's about what we want in our lives and what we want it to look like. And if you're just starting to get curious about your finances, you might simply say to yourself, I'm going to spend an hour this week looking at my accounts, debts, and income. That's it, just 1 hour. Anyone can do 1 hour.
So let's talk about common roadblocks, Mel, and how people might move through them.
Yeah, and let me be real with you about some of these roadblocks that you might hit. Because if you're prepared and if you have it written down, you're less likely to quit.
So what's the first one that people might encounter?
So the first one is overwhelm, right? You open your files, you sit down to think about money, and it feels completely overwhelming. So what's the solution? Start small, right? You don't have to fix everything in a day, and you don't have to overhaul everything in a month. So pick one thing, one teeny micro action. Maybe it's just listing all your accounts in one place. Maybe it's calculating your net worth for the first time ever. One little thing.
And so that first roadblock of being overwhelmed, the second roadblock that somebody might encounter is fear. You're afraid of what you'll find out. You're afraid that you haven't saved enough. You're afraid you made mistakes. And here's what you need to keep in mind. Whatever your situation is, you can fix it. But you can't fix it if you don't face it. And you have more power than you think. You have time, even if it doesn't feel like it. You have the ability to learn. and you have the ability to change direction.
Absolutely. And the third roadblock is conflict. And this is for those of us who are in a partnership. And talking about money may and often does bring up conflict. And that's normal because money touches everything. It's power, security, values. And if you're heading into this conversation and you're worried about conflict, that's when you might want to do it with a mediator. And I mean that sincerely. This could be a financial advisor, it could be a friend, it could be a therapist, it can be anyone that will help you keep things on track. Because if you have different views of where you want the money to go and you need someone to help you guys get on the same track, having a mediator can change everything to get you going that direction.
So the fourth roadblock is shame. And I think this is a big one because people might feel shame. You might feel shame about the mistakes you've made, the financial mistakes you've made, the money you've lost, or the debt you've accumulated. But what we want you to know is that shame is a liar. It tells you that your past mistakes define your future, but they don't. You get to decide what comes next. And that decision starts with forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself for not knowing what you didn't know, and forgiveness of yourself for making mistakes and for just being human.
Absolutely. So here's what we're going to invite you to do. Join the conversation, and not because you need to be perfect at money, right? Not because you need to have all the answers, but because your actual life depends on it. We're asking you to have this conversation that so many midlife women are not having. We're asking you to get curious about your own financial life and find someone you can talk to about this topic, because it's not too late and you just have to start somewhere.
So here's the truth. You've already done so many hard things. You've navigated your careers, your relationships. You maybe have raised humans. Maybe you've dealt with loss or dealing with aging parents. You're stronger than you know, and that strength can help you apply it to your finances and money too.
Absolutely. My favorite part, I like frameworks, but action items for you guys are the best.
Nothing lights her up like action items.
So we're going to get to action items. And this time we're going to talk about action items in 3 chunks. We're going to talk about things you can do this week, things you can do this month, and things you can do this quarter. So I'm going to start with this week. Number 1, spend 1 hour gathering your financial information. Make that list of all your bank accounts, retirement accounts, investment accounts, any debts. You don't need to review them in detail. Just know what you have on paper. Then, number 2, write down 3 things you actually want your money to do for you. Not what you think it should do, but what do you actually want that's aligned to your values. And then number 3, identify one person, partner, friend, professional, that you could have this money conversation with in the next month.
And so here are your action items for the next 30 days. Calculate your net worth. Take your total assets and subtract your total debts and write that number down. And even if it's a negative number, that's information and it's powerful. It's not judgment. Do a 30-day expense tracking. Write down or track everything you spend. And this isn't to judge yourself. It's to see where your money actually goes versus where you think it goes. And last action item for the next 30 days is schedule a coffee date or conversation with that person you identified during your weekly action, even if it's just 30 minutes and even if it feels awkward to do it.
Yep. And then this quarter. So in the next 3 months, in the next 90 days, number 1, meet with a financial advisor or do a planning session, right? You can find a template or course online. The goal is just to understand, what does a financial plan look like for your specific life? And then have a second money conversation with that person you identified, but go a little deeper. Maybe talk about fears, maybe talk about goals, review your values. And then, of course, the third, take one action step from that financial plan, right? It might be small. It might be opening a retirement account. Maybe it's increasing a contribution to your 401k. Maybe it's paying off a credit card, but just take one real step.
All right, so thanks for joining us on Midlife, Interrupted and Unfiltered.
If this episode hit home, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it.
And subscribe so we can keep interrupting your week with real talk.
Find us on Instagram at the.interruption.
where we're continuing the conversation and building this community together.
Until next time, keep interrupting the narratives
And stay unfiltered.
See you next week.